Dos Anjos fight. Khabib is just about to take Dos Anjos down with a beautiful double leg. He's going to pressurise Dos Anjos into throwing punches. He's going to go underneath it. He's going to shoot him, and he's going to take him down at the cage. Dos Anjos didn't have time for anything, but he did set up a guillotine. I think it is part of his game. He's got an arming guillotine, and really I want to scroll through this because it's not very interesting. Squeeze, 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 and stop at some point. Right, okay. The reason why we ran through this is because I want to talk from this point. Okay, so Dos Anjos here has given up on the guillotine, and we have Khabib, who is forcing his weight down into Dos Anjos' body. The hips are out from the cage. Now we're going to see how Khabib is going to control Dos Anjos against the cage. So we see Khabib move his head to above Dos Anjos' head while continuing to control the hips, and he puts his head against the cage. Now, what he's done here is he is stopping as Dos Anjos' weight is on here. Dos Anjos really needs to take this hand across and bring it out here to build a base. At the moment, he can't really build a base. He can't turn his body in this direction to get his weight underneath him. So Khabib has put his head against the cage. He's got his head above Dos Anjos, and he's going to trap the arm on this side. So if we move it forward, we'll see how Khabib traps the arm on this side. So his head is in the way of Dos Anjos getting that arm past his head. What this gives an opportunity for is it gives an opportunity for Khabib to start doing his ground and pound. So he'll keep his head against the cage. Dos Anjos hasn't got anything to protect his head at the moment, and Khabib punches him and punches him. Okay, so from here, what Khabib really wants to do is he wants to reach through, grab the back of this elbow and pull it in this direction. As he does this, though, he's going to give an opportunity with the punches for Dos Anjos to get his hand in front of Khabib's head and start to build his base. So this is not a mistake, I would say. It's just happening. So he reaches for the elbow. As you can see, Dos Anjos has reached across and managed to get his arm in front of his head. This is a dangerous moment for Khabib. He's not really got a lot holding down Dos Anjos. He hasn't been able to secure the elbow to pull it underneath. So we have a moment of transition where Khabib puts him flat against the cage. And now what he's going to do, he's going to switch out to his C grip or his S grip, whatever you want to call it. So at this moment in time, Khabib's hand is facing up the way on this hand, and on his right arm, his hand is facing down the way. The fingers are interlocked like two C's, and the thumbs are hidden. It's really difficult to undo. What this creates is it creates like a little square. So I'll try and do that again. It's straight here, it's straight here, it's straight here, and it's straight here. Now, we're going into the mat return now from here, where Khabib is going to use his body weight and use his movement. Now, I've chosen this particular section with Dos Anjos because this is the most perfect time that I can find that he does his technique, right? It's just a beautiful thing, so it's the bit that I want to share. So even now, Khabib has got his head down onto the top of the shoulder. Dos Anjos, to complete his get-up at some point, is going to have to get himself with his back flat against the cage and his hand over the top again. So he has to build his base first, and then he's going to have to return back into Khabib, try and get an overhook to stand up. Khabib's going to stop this. He's got his head on the back of the shoulder. He's got his shoulder on the shoulder, which is pushing the shoulder slightly out of joint, which means that it can only go in a straight line down here, really. He's also got his elbow at the back of the elbow, which means this elbow cannot get on there for an underhook. Okay, so he can't go for underhook, and he can't get it out for an overhook. The grip on the hip is kind of like a 45-degree angle, and the grip here is a 45-degree angle, and we've got a 45-degree angle here, okay, and a 45-degree angle here to make the circle, as it were. So at the moment, what Khabib is doing is there's this little bit of pressure pulling Dos Anjos off the cage, and that's why we're going to see Dos Anjos have to post his foot outwards. So he's going to post his foot outwards. So at this point in time, what we're going to see is Khabib maintain this control here, stopping the shoulder moving through, stopping the underhook moving through, and we're going to slowly see Khabib move his way to controlling the hips with his own hips. So, gone too far, right. Now what's happening is we have Khabib's hips touching Dos Anjos' hips. We have the weight being driven forward into this hand. This arm is very difficult for Dos Anjos to get down, because at this moment in time he's being pushed in this direction, so there's only one arm that is taking the weight. Khabib is pushing in this direction, so he's pushing this bit against the cage, but he's slightly pulling this bit away from the cage. So he's slightly pulling his hips away, and he's slightly pushing his upper body into the cage. So this foot has to be extended off the cage to stop him being pulled away from the cage. He has been taught by, I suppose by doing it and by coaches, to keep his body against the cage. It's a sensible thing to do. So we'll move through this now, because this is the beautiful bit. So what we're going to see now is we're going to see Khabib move in like a pivot. He's going to bring his hips round to here, 45 degrees. He's going to push down on this shoulder as he does it, and he's going to pull Dos Anjos' hips away from the cage. So if we see that, I mean, little details that I don't really need to go into, but if you're interested, he's touching the back of the thigh here. All right, he's stopping that leg getting perfectly straight. Okay, so that was a little detail. So now we'll move forward a little bit. We're going to see him swing his hips out to the side. So you see him go 45 degrees, and now he's yanking on this elbow, which is going to pull these hips away, and he's stuffing his shoulder into the head while lifting the arm slightly. The arm can't really get to the ground. So he's going to move so fast, he's going to explode around the corner, that it brings Dos Anjos' hips off the cage. So Dos Anjos' hips are off the cage. His weight now is going through his feet here, but Dos Anjos wants to get to the cage. He's managed to get this hand down, even though it's straight and it's against the cage, and he's got this hand down. So he's dragged his hips off. He's pressured down on the shoulder and the head onto one straight arm, which can't really base out over here to help him, and he's putting pressure downwards here. This swing here has brought him off the cage, and we've got most of the weight over the feet. So we'll move on a bit further. Now what we're going to do is we're going to see Khabib take a step to his left, and then a step to the right. No. So he takes a step to the left, and what you can see is what that has done is it's drawn Dos Anjos off his feet. So there's no weight on his feet at the moment, all right? He's really struggling to keep balance. All his weight now goes through this hand, and Khabib's weight is going through this hand. This hand that was underneath him now is not really supporting anything, because all the weight has gone over here, okay? Dos Anjos knows that he needs to have his leg out as a base here to try and drive his hip back to the cage, okay? So everything now is putting all this pressure over this one arm, and he's running his head into the hole down here. So if we move it forward again, we can see that that body cannot be supported by that one arm, and Khabib drives him to the ground completely flat. Okay, absolutely beautiful technique, absolutely beautiful technique. All right, so just one more time. He whips off the hips lined up towards the cage. All his weight is on the shoulder. All the pressure is going to go down through the hands. Only one of the hand can really support it because of his pressure through the shoulder. His hand's not really taking any weight. Dos Anjos is desperately trying to get his hips back to the cage. All the weight goes over the hands, and he presses down, boom, into the ground. Okay, so what I'm trying to get across in this video is that it's not just about running him across the cage. It's not just about running them in this direction over the hands. What we've got here is we have Khabib whip out the hips so that the base is removed and the weight is taken over the feet here, while driving down and into the shoulders, into this shoulder, and then running his weight over the one hand which can support him still until he collapses into that hole. It's an absolutely beautiful technique. I hope I've explained it well enough. If you can do it, good luck.